stands for D, deny, A, attack, and RVO is reverse victim and offender. And it's a response that somebody who is being held accountable can use to deflect blame. So they deny what they've been accused of. They attack the person making the accusation, and usually that attack takes the form of an attack on credibility. And then they most insidiously reverse victim and offender. So they put themselves into the victim role and transform the person saying that they've been harmed into the offender role. This can look like somebody saying, no, I didn't do that. Your memory is faulty. You were drunk. You're just doing this for attention. You are mentally unhealthy. Those are all kinds of attacks on credibility. And then I'm the true victim here. You're hurting me. You're hurting my family. You're hurting my reputation. You're a horrible person for doing this. You're vindictive and cruel. So this strategy, DARVO, is one that can very effectively silence people who've been truly victimized and can make perpetrators of traumas and crimes seem innocent.
We've seen it all throughout the. We hear about this all the time. Why do you think this strategy in particular is so effective at discrediting people who are coming out and talking about their own experiences and telling the truth?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I don't know entirely the answer to that. I can speculate. One thing is it's gotten a lot of airing, I should say, because you see very powerful people use DARVO and you see it be effective for them. So and you see this on television. You see people get confirmed to the Supreme Court who have just used DARVO, or elected to office, or given star roles in Hollywood. It works, and people see that. So it's natural, if you see some strategy work, that you might choose to use it. That kind of accounts for maybe why so many people are using it. But why does it work? It's playing into a number of things that exist all around us, or in the kind of water we're swimming in. So it plays into aspects of sexism and the belief that women are unreliable and just saying things for attention. It plays into our desire to not be responsible for other people's suffering. If we can take the side of the perpetrator, it relieves us of the responsibility we otherwise have to victims. And so, there's a kind of naturalness to denial. It plays into denial. Those are some of the reasons I think it's quite effective, but maybe the most important in some sense is it is a very effective kind of gaslighting in that it changes your perception of reality. And it switches figure and ground. And once you have reversed victim and offender, once you believe that the person making an accusation is not credible, it's hard to go back. It's difficult because you've now changed how you're seeing reality.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Freyd, I always say that passing two bipartisan laws was easier than changing our culture. Mm-hmm. And that's a very profound and sad statement, but still true. So you've described how DARVO can cause psychological double harm to survivors. Can you walk us through how that looks emotionally and cognitively?
Sometimes I draw an analogy to the second concussion. So if you've been the victim of some wrongdoing, a sexual crime, sexual misconduct of some kind, that's very harmful right there. It's kind of like the first blow to the head. When you get up the courage to confront it by telling the person who did it to you or others with power around you, and they respond with DARVO, that's like a second blow to the head. So we know, because we've done this research, that DARVO is harmful to the person being DARVO'd, to the person who is being directly receiving that DARVO. We know that they're more likely to blame themselves, they're more likely to have PTSD symptoms, more likely to be depressed and anxious. So it hurts the person who receives it. But not only that, we also know from research that for observers to a DARVO situation, so the third party watching in some sense, they are, if they're not informed about DARVO, they are likely to find it convincing and but to side with the perpetrator. Well, this of course allows perpetrators to keep doing what they're doing, and all of this silence future victims from coming forward.
You've said that naming DARVO is powerful. That's a big message that you've put forward. So how does education act as the first step in dismantling these patterns? What can people listening to this right now do at the moment right now to build that awareness?
Yeah, so I do think, we do have a lot of knowledge from research, but I should say a lot more research is also needed. Here's what we know from our studies so far. If we teach people about DARVO before they observe a DARVO situation, they're less likely to be swayed by it. So just knowing about it and being able to see the pattern makes people less susceptible to it as a manipulation technique. And that's great because it's not very hard to teach people about DARVO. We don't have quite as systematic evidence, but more anecdotal evidence that for people who've been the victim of DARVO, you could say, the people who've been DARVO'd, it helps them with their own feelings to understand what happened to them. And I've noticed that if people know before they do that accusation, in a sense, before they try and hold anyone accountable, if they know about DARVO, that's kind of the strongest tool, because then they can understand what is happening in the moment, and they can say, oh, I'm being DARVO'd right now. And then they're less likely to blame themselves. They're less likely to get those symptoms of anxiety and depression. This is what I have observed. We do need to do more research for me to say that, with my scientist hat on.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of the pain for survivors is the reaction and how you're maligned and all of this. It's to your point, it's like a double concussion. And so many people can relate to that. As well on a much greater scale. So Dr. Freyd, can you explain how it actually plays out in systems like the media, the courts, or even inside companies?
Yes, I first noticed DARVO in the interpersonal context. So, one person trying to hold another person accountable for some way they've been harmed. But I quickly noticed it could happen with larger entities than a single person. And one of the early situations I observed, now going back decades, was the confirmation hearings for Clarence Thomas, where Anita Hill was very strongly DARVO'd, not only by Clarence Thomas, but also by the Senate committee holding those hearings. Her credibility was attacked. And she was painted in those hearings and in the media as the perpetrator of some wrongdoing and some harm. And that was happening not just by one person, but by a whole group. And we see this when corporations circle the wagon around, say, an accused executive and use the power they have, a PR power, to attack the credibility of the individual who's dared to say what has happened to them. And, I should add, sometimes accusations are false, and sometimes people are innocent when they've been accused of something, of course. But we know from now quite a bit of research that DARVO itself is harmful, and it is not necessary. An innocent person does not need to use DARVO.
You touched